Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Crystal Hopper-Myers, and I am our STEAM Pathways assistant here at the college. I get the great opportunity to work with all of our awesome faculty and staff that's focused in science and math and technology. And today we have a really special talk for you. Something new. I was so excited that the students reached out to us and wanted to come and share their research with all of you and with us. And it's also, we have a biology and agroecology student, which we haven't had a talk since I've been here and focused in that area. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm going to actually allow the scientist, or the lead scientist at South Slough Estuarine, Dr. Schooler, to kind of do introductions for them. And just want to say thank you again for being here. Next Thursday, also, we have a student research symposium that's going to highlight all of the different student research that's happening over here, which is a lot. And we would be excited to share it with you as well at 6 o'clock in this very same room. So with that said, there you go. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. Caleb and Michelle mentioned that. I think I got the shotgun mic. I think I'm okay. So they were saying that people don't really know about what the reserve is, and it's just over in Charleston. So I thought I'd give a little bit of a shout out to the reserve. It's a 7,000-acre reserve around South Slough. We have a whole group of people who are doing a lot of work there. We've got programs for education, for research, which is what I'm part of, stewardship and coastal training. Got a lot of different options over there for people to work with us. And so it's my pleasure to help be the mentor for Caleb and Michelle on this project. When they first came to me, they said, we talked and discussed things, and I gave them a whole list of projects they could do. And they said, we want to do all those, and we want to give a presentation. So with that, I'll let them start a presentation.
I'm Michelle.
I'm Caleb. Like Shon said, we have been spending the past few months doing some work with green crabs. So at the end, or whenever, even if you want, we have some green crabs up here, some gloves. If you want to come play with them, check them out, see what they look like, that sort of thing. So let's get started. Is it not working? Oh, because we're in Zoom still. All right, we're good. All right. So these are kind of just what we're going to be covering. We're going to talk a little bit about how they got here in the first place, and then how to identify them, the effects they've been having on the ecosystem here, and then how they spread across the whole coast, and then some things that have been going on to manage them and stop their spread, and then what you can actually use them for. So this is a little diagram kind of showing some of the most invasive species just all over the world. So the biggest ones here are some algae, the green crabs, and then all over to our zebra mussels. But yeah, so it's just a cool little diagram just kind of showing all over the place what's going on. So how they got here in the first place is what most people think is through the ballast waters of ships. So at the port they're leaving from, they fill up with the water just to balance them out. And then when they get to their destination, they release all this water. And in that water can be all sorts of larvae or anything like that that can be introduced into this new ecosystem. So they were first recorded in 1817 on the East Coast. The first time they were spotted on the West Coast was 1922 in Alaska. Then by 1980, they were all over the West Coast. And then in 1998 is when we first started recording them here in Coos Bay. So here's another just good visual of kind of their native range and then where they have invaded and where they can invade. So I wish we had a laser pointer, but in the, or does this go up there? Oh, it does. So in the blue, that's where they're native, all over Europe. Here we are, West Coast invaded, East Coast, all the way down in South America, Australia, Africa, and they have so much more potential just because they can survive in those waters. So the big way they spread is through their larvae. So there's some stages and different stages in their life cycle. They start out as an egg on their mother, and then the mother releases the eggs, and it goes through a zoea phase. So there's a couple of different phases there, and then eventually that transforms into a megalope. And then after a couple more weeks, it will form into a juvenile crab, and then it will start growing. So here is what primarily brings them once they have arrived somewhere across the coast is currents. So on the West Coast here, the two big ones are the Davidson current and the California current systems. So that's what's shown on these charts. And then on this side, it was actually a study done. So up in Willapa Bay, I think that's how it's pronounced. But so they basically released a bunch of larvae, they tracked them, and all this blue stuff is all where they went. So you can even see kind of like the California current, it brings stuff out into the ocean here, and you see that same thing down here. And then the Davidson current bringing all of them north and all down south. And this is hundreds of miles, so each degree of latitude is about 70-ish miles. So that gives you some reference that they can travel all the way up and down the coast just through the currents. I'm gonna hand it over to Michelle to talk about how to identify that.
So green crabs are pretty easily identifiable. They're usually like a green muddy color to brown, and if you flip them over on their carapace, they can range from a red, orange, to a white, to a green, to yellow. And their defining features are definitely a narrow shell and 5 spines behind each eye. So as you can see there. And to just compare them to other common crabs you'll see here, Dungeness and red rock, they'll have many more spines behind their eyes. Dungeness have 10 and red rock have 8, and I really don't think you can get them confused. They look very different.
Yeah, so then a little bit about why they're a threat. So they eat basically anything. They are active predators, so they like track their prey, attack things, or they're just scavengers, just pick up whatever they can. Some of the things they eat are bivalves, so things like clams, oysters, scallops, stuff like that. They also eat the juvenile Dungeness crabs or any native shore crab they can get a hold of. And then they're also very disruptive to eelgrass. So eelgrass is a very, very important ecosystem we have here and all over the coast. It does a lot of things. It provides shelter for young fish, for young crabs. It filters out water. It provides foraging areas, again, for fish and crabs. And then some more things it does is it helps reduce erosion. It provides spawning grounds, again, for more fish, crabs, stuff like that. And then it also is food for sea turtles and waterfowl. And the reason they're very dangerous to the eelgrass is because they like to dig it up and eat the roots or the rhizomes underground. So this was a pretty cool little chart and little study done with the crabs and the eelgrass. So just the gist of it, basically, took some pools, put some eelgrass and some crabs in it. And this chart here is showing, so like there's 0 crabs in the pool, the control, none of the eelgrass shoots were damaged. With 1 crab, that's like one of the shoots were damaged. And then what did the most damage was having 4 crabs in the pool. It damaged, I think what that's about 14 shoots. So it's just a good visual to see that they do damage and what the density of them does. So then here's another visual. This visual is kind of covering just Dungeness and the European green crab population. And pretty much through all of them, you see a pretty basic trend is the green crabs, so the blue lines, their population is rising. And then the red lines is the Dungeness, and pretty much in everyone, their population is declining in correlation with the green crab population growing.
No.
And oh yes, and these are all places in Coos Bay. So the place we've mainly done tracking is the Coos History Museum. But then the places where it's kind of most visible here was in Metcalf, the Jonay Slough, and then the Isthmus Slough. Then here's another visual of just showing the growth of the population. So this is just the average amount of traps, just growing over time. It's another just great visual to see that they are pretty rapidly growing here. And then another reason why they thrive so well in this environment is just because they're very resilient creatures, being shore crabs, so they have to survive underwater, out of the water, in the sun, in many different environments in their small little habitat. So they can survive in temperatures from 0 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. They can't live in it for very long, but they can survive. And then they're also very tolerant to salinity changes. So again, it just gives them advantages over native crabs in being able to live all through the estuary. And then this is something we found interesting. So it's probably a little hard to see, but this was a crab we trapped that actually had a big hole in his shell, and we could see basically straight to all his guts and all that fun stuff. He survived for about 2 weeks when we had him, but we pulled him out of the wild with the hole in his shell. So I just thought that was pretty cool to show that they can survive with holes in their shells, missing limbs, that sort of thing.
So another threat that these green crabs pose is to the local seafood businesses here on the coast. I had the opportunity to meet with the owner of Qualman Oyster Farms, and we spoke about how green crabs were affecting his business, and it was really surprising because he said that his business was extremely affected, and sometimes he would go out there and half a cluster of oysters would have been broken into, nested, and eaten by green crabs. And he would just say that all the time he would see green crabs everywhere. So the peak of our internship is going to be when the crabs molt. We're trying to find a consistency on the West Coast for data on their molting periods.
Yeah, so the way we have tracked their molting is we go out and trap them and then hold them in seawater tables. So in this picture over here is how we hold the crabs. They each have their own little hotel, we call them. They're all numbered. They get fed dog food basically every week, give them a couple pellets, and we just watch them. So we'll get to the next slides. We'll get to how we identify them and see like when they're going to molt, that sort of thing. So the first stage is just between molting. There's really no change in their shell. There's no change in coloration. They're just kind of living their life, doing their thing. And then when they're starting to get to pre-molt is a couple weeks out from when they're going to molt. So a couple of good ways to identify this is you can see these white halos along the edge of the shell. So that's the biggest identifier, but also their shell in some places might start to feel a little soft or flexible. So then when they're going to molt within a couple days, then the whole shell will kind of change color and go this kind of creamy, opaque color. It'll start to feel soft. And this is when we really want to start watching them and checking them every day because they'll most likely molt in 1 to 3 days. So then when they're molting, they basically just crawl backwards out of their shell. The whole new crab will be soft, and then their shell will harden in about 12 to 24 hours if they aren't taken refrigerated. So then the reason, I'll talk a little bit about this first actually. So how they molt is when they're too big for their current shell, they have to molt or they'll just die because they'll get squeezed too much. So when they start to get too big for their shell, there's hormones signaled in the crab, and they will start to molt. So I want to talk a little bit why we're doing this. We'll get to that a little later, but the big thing is we just want to be able to hopefully then give all this information to commercial fisheries to hopefully develop a soft shell crab industry here on the coast, because that's just another great way to manage them while also being profitable.
So there's a few ways for managing the populations here. Obviously, we're targeting the physical, going out there trapping, promoting you guys to go trapping, and promoting a possible industry on the West Coast here. And for biological, we could introduce diseases or specific parasites, but that would have possible risks. We could also interfere with their mating by putting pheromones into the water, and for ecological pest management, we could promote native predators such as red rock crabs to increase the resistance. So how can you get involved? Trapping, obviously. Some draws are composting, chicken feed, and eating. And something else that's cool that's going on is research on water treatment with the green crab for filtering things. So here's a good map of monitoring sites that we've gone to a few of them, but we're focusing on the Coos History Museum because that's the main hotspot where they found the highest density of crabs. And the other two hotspots are the Isthmus Slough and the Joni Slough. But these are all the monitoring sites that South Slough has been monitoring. So how to trap? We've been using these SWOCC traps with a bait capsule and a stake, and we basically just along the shore have 8 to 10 traps, and we'll have them right at the shore during low tide and stake them into the ground. And they do not blow away in the ocean, surprisingly. But yeah, this is a picture of the site. We also have tried using shrimp traps, which is right here, and we have a minnow trap somewhere to show. And obviously you need a shellfish license. You can get that online at ODFW. So to make it more accessible, I was wondering if a regular crab trap would work. So this is my personal crab trap, and I went out and to the site and set them out for about 30 minutes, and it was successful. I got exactly seven crabs in each. This is a picture of how I just threw it next to the rocks. And also thought a good place to go was this dock at the Coos History Museum. But the reason why we use these traps and not those is because the crabs are small and can escape easily from that netting. So a way you can solve this issue is by putting more netting or a cloth around and just safety pinning it there. I thought that would be a good idea. So Shon's Shon's been using tuna, but I was like, what if we use chicken? Because it's very popular on the docks. Everyone uses chicken, and that's kind of surprising to me because chicken don't live in the ocean, but they really like chicken. And so I had an idea because Shon had never heard of feeding the green crabs chickens. So we went out and did a bait test 4 trappings to see if chicken or tuna would be more successful. And my hypothesis was that chicken would be more successful just because it was more popular. But when we went out there, we were like, actually, maybe tuna will be more successful. Because if you think a can of tuna stinks, the tuna that Shon has really stinks. It's like raw, salted tuna, and it's pretty bad. And we have to use gloves, or else it will last on your fingers for a week. So, anyways, we went out there and set out 8 traps, 4 with chicken, 4 with tuna, and had very surprising results. We had an average of 20 crabs per trap when we used chicken, and only 6 crabs per trap when using tuna. So they were out at the same time, and the crabs chose the chicken over the tuna every time. And here's just a picture to show that here was the tuna, and here is a whole 5-gallon bucket filled up with crabs with for the chicken. And that's like 100 crabs, right? Like 70 probably. So another way to use the crabs, is to feed your chickens. And one of our friends made this awesome video to show that you can feed your chickens the crab.
Yeah, so just a couple things they're doing. Half the crabs are just leaving whole. The other crab, he has a little guy there smashing them up. So you don't really need to do anything special with the crabs. If you want to feed them to your chickens, you can cook them, you can give them to them raw, just smash them up or throw them in from whole, and they'll basically kind of pick them apart, eat them.
Oh, they're eating.
There we go. Now
They're eating the crabs. And they love it. You guys have chickens? No?
all right. I think that's good. Yeah, so for the chickens, it's just a super great thing because once you get your license, it's basically a free way to feed your chickens instead of going to buy chicken feed or anything like that.
So crabs are very high in nitrogen, phosphorus, magnesium, calcium, and chitin, which are all great things to add to your garden. And as you can see, Down to Earth actually sells a crab meal, but you can just make it yourself using the green crabs. And there's also multiple recipes online for things like crab fertilizer tea. And Seacoast Compost actually has crab shells in their compost tea. So, yeah. And something I thought was interesting that, could be changed is that Down to Earth also uses Dungeness crabs for their crab meal. Maybe they could start using green crabs.
So this is a little more about using them for water treatment, like Michelle was talking about. So there's a few places doing this. A big one is in Washington. But basically, green crab shells especially are very high in chitosan, which can be processed down to chitin, which then is used to treat wastewater. So again, it's just a super awesome, sustainable, pretty cheap way to treat wastewater.
So guys, you can also eat them. And they taste great. So this is a cookbook somebody made. It's pretty awesome. And A downside is that they're so small, as you can see, so it is a little bit harder to get their meat out, and that's something that people don't want to do. But in my experience, it was really easy to get the meat out of them, and it just takes a little bit extra work. But this is a meat extraction machine that basically just crushes the crabs and squeezes out the meat through a sift. And for a potential green crab industry here, maybe one of you guys could just get this machine and sell the meat. So you guys might be wondering, is the green crab yummy? Well, I think they're yummy, but you can't really trust me. So I did a taste test to see if people like popular Dungeness crab more or green crab more. So some of you might have participated in this test. And the results are shocking. So I told people, it was a blind taste test, and I told people to rate the crab 1 to 10. And a lot of people didn't really like crabs, so this is kind of biased. It was a lot of college kids that were like, I don't really like crab, but I'll try it. So I got 20 individuals to rate each 1 out of 10, and then after they would guess which one was the Dungeness, which one was the green. And I got average result of 7.3 out of 10 rating for the Dungeness and a 7.8 out of 10 for the green. So it's pretty great. People liked it better. I like it better because it has more flavor, it's sweeter, tastes a little bit more like the ocean, and it's a lot softer.
Yeah, so that's basically it. Just some conclusions here. Basically, they're kind of taking over our estuaries. Their population is growing. They're outcompeting our native species and threatening our ecosystems. And the best thing you can do is trap them yourself, and you can use them for any of the things we just showed you. So yeah, that's about it. We got a little slide if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, we have, if anyone wants to come check out, we have crabs up here. We have some gloves. You don't want to get pinched. You want to put your hands in there and check them out.
So when you cook the green crab, does it turn red like the Dungeness?
It does.
Is that how nobody knew the difference?
So I used gloves and extracted the meat myself so that there was no bias because
So they didn't know.
they didn't know. Usually I would hand feed them with their eyes closed, but I would sometimes let them hold the spoon.
But they do turn red when they cook them?
Well, the shell turns red, but the meat doesn't. The meat has a slightly different color than Dungeness. Dungeness is very white and it's off-white. Not green, but yeah. Yes, and no.
How can you tell if the crab is mature, like when you're out hunting for
Is that, why would you need to know?
them? If they're mature, like.
I mean, you can eat them at any stage, we just want to get rid of them, but it's their size. Their size just, it doesn't look safe to eat the same thing.
How big are they when they're mature?
Yeah, so they can get basically up to 4, sometimes even 6 inches.
Not really though. The ones here are pretty small, and
This guy is
compared to their body, they have quite a small shell, so.
yeah, they have a pretty small shell. Really the best thing to eat is just the claws because they do have pretty big claws. But this is about like a medium-sized one.
Yeah, on average, I'd say like 2.5 to probably 3 inches average. Yes.
Does Oregon have a certain limit on green crabs that you can harvest?
Yes, so because of misidentification, the harvest limit is 35 per day. maybe that'll change as people get more informed on how to identify them, but yeah.
Small traps.
So you can get them online. These are pretty nice because they're actually a lot cheaper than regular crab traps. Shon's found them for like $16, right?
They're usually around 20.
$20. I found them for like $30 online. I can't really find exactly, but Shon could probably link you up.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, you.
Okay, so I've gone crabbing down like by the Charleston docks and successfully gotten out red rock and Dungeness, so like was looking for green crab and like not finding them when I was like going crabbing. Is that because I was using a big crabbing pot, or is it like they're just in different spots?
Yeah, they live in estuaries, so closer to the shore. Yeah, we live in that. But if you're crabbing off of a dock, you'll probably not find many. I found some on a dock though.
Yeah, so it's better to like to go out to them. It's the better to be like closer to the shore.
Closer to the shore and at the hot spots.
Yeah, so they like to live higher up in the estuary just because there's not as many predators there. There's not as many mature red rock or Dungeness crabs. So that's why if you can find any areas kind of just up higher in the estuary, we like the Coos History Museum, just because it's pretty accessible. So yeah, basically, kinda. We actually have caught, I think, one green crab at Charleston.
Yeah.
But yeah, mainly they like to stay higher up, kind of away from the big Dungeness crab. Well, if anyone would like to come up and take a look at the crabs.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I also wanted to mention that next Thursday as well, earlier in the day, beginning I believe at 10 o'clock in the morning, they are doing a fundraiser for the agroecology department. They're trying to help raise money for supplies over there and internship, and they have plants and veggies. So that's over there by OCCI is where the garden is, 10 o'clock next Thursday. Thank you, Dr. Schooler and Michelle, Caleb, and you guys are all welcome to come up here and check out the crabs. On top of also, you can check out this building, all the different labs, begin and see that. Thank you.
Also, I made an infographic, so if, some takeaways, if you want to grab it, it's the green sheet. Yep. Sure.
Thank you.